tonight.
Honourable members, I suspend the House for 30 minutes. The House is suspended.
Parliament forced to suspend momentarily as the House erupted in chaos, with NPP MPs vowing not to allow any government business if Ablekuma North constituency is not represented in the House.
The people of Ablekuma need a representation, and government must take steps in ensuring that the Electoral Commission declares. Thank you.
We have details as Parliament approves Alhaji Muntaka Mubarak as Minister of Interior. We ask, what must be his focus as he assumes office? This and more on Top Story, brought to you by Telecel Connecting Energies and Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy a holy sleep.
Ablekuma needs a voice. They must be represented. No business.
Sounds of NPP MPs banging their tables, singing and chanting on the floor of Parliament, vowing not to allow any government business proceed if Ablekuma North constituency is not represented in the House. The majority leader, Mahama Yariga, had earlier presented a business statement for next week, but the minority were not enthused that no mention was made of their demand for the EC to provide it with the security needed to complete the collation of results in that particular constituency. Listen to minority leader Afenyo-Markin after the presentation.
The NDC regional party, led by its regional organizer, led some party members to attack the EC Collation Center. And the EC issued a public statement to condemn the act and pleaded with the police to intervene to protect them. Mr. Speaker, this was the basis of the protest we raised. When business statements are read, it is the responsibility of any member of this House to raise a matter of national interest for the leader of government business to ferry same to government for address. It was on that basis that Dr. Kasiel Atuforsen assured the House, Dr. Kasiel Atuforsen assured the House that he will take steps to address the matter. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, the EC has not received the necessary protection from the Elections Security Task Force to enable it conclude the collation and final declaration of Ablekuma North parliamentary elections. Mr. Speaker, the Electoral Commission complained of threat to the lives of its staff. The Electoral Commission complained of destruction of its properties. I would want my respected colleague who has just come to take steps in ensuring that Dr. Dampari, the IGP, who is the head of the Election Security Task Force, is able to provide sufficient security to enable the EC undertake its constitutional mandate. Mr. Speaker, we raise this as a serious democratic matter because it is a blot on our otherwise peaceful democracy. This is supposed to be a 276-member chamber. We are 275. The people of Ablekuma need a representation, and government must take steps in ensuring that the Electoral Commission declares. Thank you.
Now, right after he finished speaking, the NPP MPs rose to their feet with placards bearing various inscriptions, notably, no Ablekuma North, no government business. Listen.
Take your hands off Ablekuma now. Ablekuma needs a voice. They must be represented. Ethiopia, no business. No Ablekuma, no business. Take your hands off. Honorable members, no government business. No Ablekuma, no government business. No Ablekuma, no business.
Well, so that was the minority there, and Parliamentary Affairs Correspondent Kweku Asante has been in the House for throughout the day, and he joins me, from Parliament with details. Kweku, you were there. What we heard degenerated into something, that was unexpected. That forced the House to be suspended. Tell us more.
Well, yes, when it comes to showing placards and other things in Parliament, they are not new, but normally they will last for a minute or two. But this time around, the NPP MPs really meant their word when they said no Ablekuma North, no government business. A lot of them bearing placards with various inscriptions, some of them hitting their tables with their order papers, their standing orders and other documents, a lot of them using their hands. It was so much, it continued from 5 to 10 minutes. The second deputy speaker who was presiding clearly was not able to bring the House under control, and there was not much that could be done. In fact, at the time, the majority leader, Mahama was on his feet, trying to address some of the concerns that have been raised. The NPP MPs will not listen to anybody, and they kept banging the table. They kept demanding that Ablekuma North must be represented in Parliament, for which reason, without saying they were not going to allow any business proceed. They went on and on and on. The second deputy speaker who was presiding was speaking through the microphone. At that point, you could not even hear him because the noise was so loud in the chamber. And this is a minority with just 88. And in fact, at the time, these persons who were chanting and doing all these were numbering just about 30. And they were on their feet, making the point, a lot of them speaking through the mic, banging the tables, insisting no government business was going to go ahead if these concerns were not addressed. And so they went on and on. The speaker, second deputy speaker, must emphasize, sensing that not much can be done about the situation, had to suspend sitting for about 30 minutes and then walk out, and then later on invite the leadership for some talks.
So once that was done, I guess it was resolved because Parliament business continued. But how was it resolved?
Well, yes, the meeting did last more than 30 minutes because it's suspended for 30 minutes. But nearing an hour, leadership were still locked in that meeting to try and come to some form of a conclusion. And so there were a lot of talk between the leadership. In fact, on the floor, I could sense the speaker's usher coming in and then inviting the leadership on both sides, Mahama, Afenyo-Markin, Dafia Mekpal, the new chief whip, and all the other colleagues. All of them went into this conclave meeting at the speaker's lobby. They spoke for some time, and then the speaker came in and then called on leadership to announce some of the agreements. It was then that Afenyo-Markin then explained that, well, they would now back down on their stance a bit because they had said no government business will go through if the issues regarding Ablekuma North were not resolved. And so they were backing down on that a bit to allow that, but they will be expecting that certain concrete measures will be taken to ensure that Ablekuma North is represented in Parliament.
We've had some engagement on the way forward in this chamber, and we've agreed that the outstanding business for today must be taken in view of the assurances that the matters in issue will be ferried to the appropriate quarters, all in the name of democracy, for the right thing to be done. Mr. Speaker, that said, I want to assure you, the Chair, and my respected colleagues to your right, that for the rest of the day, we will discharge our democratic rights in this chamber by supporting government business. I shall conclude, however, by expressing a displeasure on a matter that nearly marred the beauty of our engagement as a parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is a house of brains. This is a house where we apply knowledge to resolve issues. We do not use brow to resolve issues. My respected colleague, Honorable Nogbe of Ashama, sought permission from his leaders, and I'm happy that the respected majority leader said no to his request. That leader, allow us to beat them. Who are you going to beat? Mr. Speaker, never, ever. I want my respected colleague Nogbe to know, never, ever should it be that he would open his mouth to say he would beat somebody in this house. He is gaining notoriety for this. We are all brothers and sisters in this chamber. When we are unhappy about something, we express that displeasure, but we will not attack anybody. We are law abiding. So I will plead with my respected friend Nogbe that in future, when there are certain things, he should know how he would make certain utterances. I will not accept it, but today, because of the engagement with my respected colleague, who is also my senior, the majority leader remains my senior, and I respect him, and I respect the chair, and our side will respect your side, all in the interest of Ghana. But this issue of threats, never again should it happen. Thank you.
Well, what else has been happening in Parliament today?
So just gone by, the House has approved the nomination of some of the persons that were nominated by John Dramani Mahama to serve. We know that they have been vetting the regional minister. So Ali Adolf John, the minister designate for Northern Region, approved. John Kwejo Japon, minister designate Oti Region, approved. And then James Gunu, minister designate Volta Region, also approved. And then Mrs. Rita Akosua Awati, minister designate Eastern Region, approved. And then the nominee who was vetted today, Muntaka Mubarak, also approved for the Interior Ministry. So the ball is now in the court of John Dramani Mahama to swear them in to begin the official responsibilities.
So more like, the Interior Minister was vetted based on, because of his office.
Yes, the peculiar nature of the office.
He was
and
not
how
on the list today.
He was not on the list at all. In fact,
approved today.
None of the persons who were nominated together with him have been vetted. The Defense Minister, Foreign Affairs, and all of that. They've all been scheduled for next week. But they said because of certain national security exigencies, they vetted him today and ended just around 1:30, and the report was put on the floor. And just around 5:20, he got a nod to be approved and to be sworn in.
Let's zoom on. Top story, always brought to you by Telecel and Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. We have Dr. Rashid Draman on the line. He is Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. We also have Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired author and security analyst. We have both on the line. Let me start with you, Dr. Rashid Draman. Now, you've been monitoring Parliament. What do you make of this happening where the minority, based on the fact that a constituency they believe they've won has not been declared in their favor, and that the security has not been provided for EC to continue the coalition, they had to get the House to be suspended? Dr. Doman, if you can hear me, I want to pick your thought on what happened in the House today, where Parliament was suspended for 30 minutes. Okay, we'll try and get Dr. Rashid Draman. He is Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, to share some perspectives. Doc, I understand you are with me. I want to understand from you what to make of what happened in Parliament today. Okay, we'll get back to him, but let me. Dr. Rashid Rahman is on. Doc, I want to understand what your thoughts on what happened in Parliament today.
I think we are beginning to see a situation where the minority side, I mean, despite its small numbers, is beginning to pull a strategy that they think is going to work for them. That is just simply disrupting the processes of conducting parliamentary business.
But if
it's a strategy, I believe that is working mainly because I think they think that, I mean, that is one way by which they can make their voices heard. And also, I think they believe, I mean, from maybe looking behind the leader of government business, that the majority side doesn't have the numbers at that moment in time.
But if this is to, sort of disrupt parliamentary business, is it a good strategy if you're looking at the end objective of what they can do to benefit Ghana and not they as minority?
No, it's not a good strategy. I think that they have to be very careful, not only in terms of the fact that it's not going to benefit our country. I think they also want to be careful that it doesn't backfire on them, because once the Right Honourable Speaker starts cracking the whip, that might be good for them. It might be an embarrassing strategy. But yes, most importantly, they have right now, Ghanaians are counting on them more than ever before because of the numbers that the NDC has. Their role is supposed to sit there through the force of argument to convince all of us that they are a credible government in waiting. But if you go and you are disruptive and you are rowdy, I think it's going to be a strategy that might not inure to your benefit as a caucus. They need to rethink it.
But this isn't the first time we're seeing a minority behave like this, is it?
Yes, indeed. Even this minority, this is not the first time. The very first day of this parliament, they pulled that strategy when the minority leader was seconding the motion to elect Right Honourable Babu as Speaker. You remember what happened? They ended up singing the anthem of the MPP and disrupting processes for a short while. So true, this is not the first time. But I think it's too early. Already, many Ghanaians are not satisfied with, how the appointment process has gone up to this point. And just like how Ghanaians criticize the NDC in the 8th Parliament about their role in the appointment of ministers, so are they putting the blame, most of it, on the minority. So they need to be really very careful. I think they can provide a credible alternative, can provide effective oversight, but I think they would need to carefully think through their strategy.
But if the majority is also having difficulties in pulling its numbers, despite the overwhelming majority they have, won't the minority exploit that gap in making sure that they do push the agenda across?
Yes, indeed. In fact, that's what exactly they are doing, and I'm very disappointed in the majority. With these huge numbers, they should always be able to at least whip their members to be in the House. Several times today, Honorable Afenyo-Markin asked Honorable Ayarga, look at your back. Look at your back. I think it's very difficult. In the 8th Parliament, you could understand. When you have 137, and the majority side, with their slim majority with people who are already ministers. In this particular case, ministers have not even been approved yet. Only a handful. So those who were absent, who can understand, maybe Minister for Finance and his other colleagues. But to have a chamber that is empty behind the majority leader in these early days, I think doesn't send a very good signal in terms of the showing and in terms of what they are going to use the majority to do for this country.
Doc, stay with me. Let me bring in Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired, to look at the other angle about the appointment or the confirmation of Muntaka Mubarak as the Interior Minister. You've been in the security space for quite some time. What should be the focus of Muntaka Mubarak as he assumed the office of the Interior Minister for Ghana?
First of all, thanks for having me, and my regards to Dr. Draman. I think, in a very general sense, the area of public safety, law and order, is one or are those that stand out as areas that you should be preoccupied with. And precisely we're looking at the law and order aspects of the Boko conflict, revolving around small arms, which is a police function to regulate and to control. And I think one of the questions, or some of the questions, revolve around how he is going to ensure that the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, are managed. Then we have, let me refer to it as a subculture that has, been with us throughout this Fourth Republic, especially before, during, and after transitions. And I'm not too sure whether I can attribute the spate of violence, as I've referred to, as a result of a kind of weakness in the transition. In military operations, normally, anytime you rotate your troops, i.e. you pull some of them out and replace them in the front line, including even in peacekeeping, the negative forces would want to test the result of the incoming contingent or troops. So I'm not too sure whether this is a case of a government going out, another government incoming, but not having fully taken office. And as you refer to, the ministers are just in the process of being conferred and being sworn in. So there could be a kind of gap in the command and control and management and leadership, political leadership of some of these institutions. Those in his sector that I've said are about 10, the police, the corrections, the fire service, the immigration, the narcotics, this, that. But having said that, he kept referring to his team, the experts, the technical people. So whether there is a minister in office or not, there is a police, and there is a fire service, and there is narcotics control authority, if that is what it is, who have their leaders. So should we rather be talking about the leadership, the professional leadership of these institutions, as opposed to people accusing the incoming administration that, you've taken over and Obuasi is happening and this and that and that and that. When indeed it is not these political leaders that are going to, take the front line and resolve some of these. However, if after a reasonable period of time, I have to be very general, the new political leadership has not stamped its authority on the institutions that they are supposed to manage, then we can hold them accountable. So in a way, Obuasi is that people are making noise about as if it was the president per se who ordered soldiers to kill, and I'm told this morning that we have about 11 fatalities. That shouldn't be the case. what should be the argument is that when law enforcement of the security forces act in a law enforcement role and there seems to be a non-adherence to established rules of engagement, then we need to talk about the professional lack of adherence to those rules of engagement. And necessarily we need to talk about investigations and talk about accountability.
Okay.
And in that regard, I think the president has already directed, although I don't know the details of the investigations that the president has directed to go into, what do you call it, the Obuasi incident. I've also heard that it's a political party that ordered its foot soldiers, to invade the premises of the Anglo-Go. It may be conjecture, it may be rumors. We need to wait for the investigations to establish, the facts around that incident.
Something that should is it something
the government has a resolve to deal with the perpetrators of the violence as well as those on the professional side who might have, on the surface of it, used excessive force.
Is this something you expect him to prioritize as he takes office after being confirmed?
Well, as I've tried to suggest, all that he has to do is to call the leadership of the institutions, of the agencies under his ministry, to hold them accountable for their performing their functions. Because we need to understand that no minister is going to go, probably with the exception of the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Interior is not going to be the Director of Operations for the police. If we take Ablekuma, which has been an issue in Parliament as you discussed with Dr. Draman, the EC is still in charge. She says, or the EC says that it needs protection. The institution that must provide the protection is also in place. So why is it that these institutions are not exercising, the authority that is granted them?
Why do you think? Why do you think that is so?
Well, I can't tell.
Okay.
It may be that in a transition, people are not sure as to whether they should use the excessive force that we have been, accustomed to, or whether they need to find other methods. And I think on another media platform, for instance, the police was commended for deploying unarmed police officers so that when the casualties occurred, they were not attributable to the police, but were attributable, first of all, to vigilantes and those protecting politicians and some armed men. So therefore, as before, we need to find out how these episodes of violence occur. Then the political authority will be expected to ensure that there is justice so we can rein in impunity. But the way we are going, that every time there is a transition, some of these invasions of government property under the pretext or within the philosophy of Yaban Abba, our government has come, we're going to take over. Those leaving office will think that they have to live with as much of whatever belongs to the state as possible. And we haven't been able to find some solutions to address that subculture. And every cycle of transition, it seems to be escalating. 11 civilians killed for whatever reason, it's one too many.
Okay. All right. Now, some people have had issues with the questioning at the appointment committee. If you look at Muntaka Mubarak as Interior Minister, what would you say about the questioning that or the questions that were put to him? Were they really ones that could let you be satisfied with the person who is going to occupy that particular office?
Well, sincerely, I cannot comment on the way and manner in which the members of parliament, i.e. the vetting committee, conducted the questioning and the quality of the questions. Because we have a history where I think in one instance in the past, because somebody was following a certain religious faith, she was asked to sing a hymn. At the time, it was right for those who were the majority. And now, some of the questions have been questioned by those who are the minority. So if that is the way our parliamentarians want to choose to address this vetting committee, but I cannot comment on it. But then we must be aware that these officials are coming to perform very critical functions to safeguard the nation and uphold the protection of human rights. If you're talking about the interior and so on and so forth.
Right.
I didn't see any question regarding ownership of property, which had some political connotations. For instance, this gentleman is not the one who is the head of any department that, sees to the sale of state lands and so on and so forth. So to equalize, because the majority is saying that we're going to use oral, assumedly, to deal with those who have illegally acquired state lands. At the vetting, you are throwing in questions in order to compromise the incoming minister and the administration that he belongs to. I'm not sure that should be, the philosophy of the vetting. And maybe I should say, on the one hand, the minority leader seems to be very, very, very structured in the questions that he asks. Except that, to me, sometimes he asks too many questions, But it does appear that some don't do any homework as to what questions they're going to ask.
Okay, all right.
Which will be relevant to the ministry of the designee.
Okay.
So members of parliament need to come to a consensus that there has to be a certain way or manner in which the vetting committee does its work. And not one of quid pro quo, that during your time we didn't ask you too many tough questions, or don't ask us too many tough questions. Or if during your time
should they invite experts? Should they invite experts like yourself, to aid in the questioning? Should that proposal be something that they should explore?
Excuse me?
Should they invite experts like yourself who understand the field to do the questioning in the future?
Some have suggested, but I would say that shouldn't be necessary. For instance, if I am in opposition as a member of parliament, and there is going to be a minister of interior designate, I will look around for institutions and persons who have knowledge of the sector and then ask them to suggest to me what, relevant questions, pertinent questions that I should ask. Now, asking the question which has been suggested does not need any expertise. Of course, the one who is suggesting the question will give you a guideline as to what answers to expect. So we can keep it on the one hand as a business for parliament.
I'm grateful to you. Colonel Festus Aboagye is a retired army officer. He's an author and security expert. This has been Top Story, brought to you by Telecel, connecting energies, unholy insecticide spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Up next is Ghana Connect with Kweku Asante.
Yes, and you just ended on the